2022 has been the absolute worst and best year of my life. So today I just wanted to look back and reflect on everything that's happened this past year and really the lessons learned that I want to take with me into 2023 as a musician, as a composer, a learner, and an individual. And I really struggled planning out this video because I just wasn't sure how I wanted to articulate everything properly. But I knew that I wanted to keep this a little bit more candid than usual. I actually have some notes in front of me just so I can keep track of my thoughts as we go through. And just as a heads up, this is a reflection on both the good and the bad from this year. So I'm going to discuss what I find to be heavy but important topics. And just as a disclaimer, I'm not a licensed therapist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not anything. I'm just sharing my experiences and my thoughts that hopefully might reach someone that might be going through something similar. So I figured let's just start with the bad so we can get that out of the way and make room for all the good that happened. So last year, my dad became very sick very suddenly, and just a few months ago, he passed away. And I spent the better part of a year just being with him, taking care of him, and dealing with all of the important legal work stuff that comes along with all this. But I basically put my life on hold. I couldn't find a steady balance with my music, with YouTube, with my personal life, and then on top of all that, everything that I was dealing with my dad. And 2 months to the day of my dad's passing, my grandfather passed away. And these were relatively young men, they weren't old. It wasn't like this was expected. This was just very out of nowhere. So just in the span of 2 months, I had to process, and I'm still processing, the grief and the loss of two very important men in my life. And I'm not sharing this because I want to feel sad or be sad or have a pity party. But over the past few months, I've really opened up my eyes to the lessons learned from these losses. First, these experiences have really brought me closer to my family. While everything was going on, they showed up when I needed them most. Also, I've been trying to find ways to honor my dad and my grandpa in my day to day life. For example, my dad was a huge Mets fan. Now I've really been trying to get into baseball. And for my grandpa, he was an artist. And so I displayed some of his sculptures throughout my apartment. But ultimately, I realized that time isn't infinite. And, that's something that I always knew, but now it's become so crystal clear that I don't want to spend a single second of my life doing something that doesn't bring me joy. I don't want to be stuck in a job that I hate. I don't want to look back and regret not following my dream. I don't know what my life is going to look like in 30, 40, 50 years, but I do know that I want to be happy with how I live my life. There's just a lot of sadness and weight that comes with loss, but if there's anything to be glad about, it's that I'm learning these lessons now before it's too late. So that was the sad stuff. 2022, just an incredibly difficult year to get through. But at the same time, it has still managed to be one of the best years of my life. So let's break that down a little bit. For one thing, I got married a few months ago, and that was the best day of my life. Even though my wife and I planned on having both my dad and my grandpa at the wedding when we first got engaged, we did little things to honor them just kind of throughout that whole day. We set up a memories table that was filled with photos. I actually wore Mets cufflinks, and, we kind of honored them and spoke about them at the dinner. So we did try our best to make it feel like they were still with us. 2022 also gave me such clarity in my mindset and my goals for the new year. Needless to say, throughout the year, my inspiration, my creativity was at an all-time low. I didn't want to do the things that I wanted to do, but then I felt bad for not doing them. It's a real rabbit hole that you don't want to fall into because that kind of mindset mixed with just all the sadness that comes with loss can really send you into a spiral. But once I shifted my thinking to living a life without regrets, I was able to actually crawl out of that hole and start taking these small baby steps towards accomplishing my goals. And the thing is, if you're any kind of creator or photographer or musician or filmmaker, you'll know that creativity inspires creativity. The more that you are just involved and creating and practicing your craft, the more your mind opens up to new ideas. And I do talk a little bit about this in my goal setting video, but if you were to convince yourself to do something for 10 or 20 minutes, you can either decide that you met your goal for the day, which makes you feel accomplished and in turn gives you this positive feeling towards the actions that you took, or you realize that 20 minutes isn't that bad. It went by quickly, you were in the zone, and that you want to give yourself another 20 minutes. Now, we can't control everything in our lives, but we can control our outlook, we can control our mindset, and we can set ourselves up for when inspiration and creativity decide to strike. So same as my lack of inspiration over the past year, I felt like my consistency on YouTube was also severely impacted. Months would go by without any uploads, and then I might release a video and then allow myself to go another few months without any other uploads. And I do have to just cut myself some slack, because after everything that has happened this past year, I think it's okay for me not to be as consistent as I wanted to be. But the whole reason why I got into this channel was because I wanted to share my thoughts and my experiences with other composers and musicians. I wanted to help others feel like, yes, they could write their own music even if they're brand new to this field. So when I wasn't being consistent on YouTube, my initial reaction was that I was doing a disservice to anyone who subscribed. But I had to think about why I was making these videos in the first place. I had to remind myself that the work that I put in and the content that comes out actually does matter, and I am helping people. YouTube has just been a great way for me to connect with so many other musicians from all over. And even on social media, I love seeing composers just do their own thing, how they might be different, how we can learn from one another, and I really just love seeing them grow over time. YouTube has also led to opportunities that I'm just still very excited about. This past year, I actually connected with Zach Heidi, a composer who I look up to as a musician and a YouTuber. Throughout the year, I was editing a lot of his videos, and I felt like I was learning so much just in that process. I've also made some connections with some of my favorite sample developers, but also some developers that I really didn't know of until this year. I've developed relationships with the folks over at Cinesamples, at Sound Iron, Teletone Audio, Westwood Instruments, Inlet Audio, and I just don't think any of that would have happened if I wasn't on YouTube. I'm looking back, and I've been on here for 2 years now, and I'm just really proud of how I've grown over that time. That's in terms of subscribers, that's in terms of the video quality, but it's also in terms of my confidence in sharing what I know with you. I'm so far from being an expert on music or YouTube or business, but I'm just constantly trying to learn and educate myself on those areas. One, because I'm a huge nerd and I love learning, but also because I want to share what I'm actively learning with you. This year has just been filled with such high highs and low lows, and even though I don't feel like I have everything figured out, I'm actually kind of excited to take what I've learned into 2023. So since this is the last video of the year, I'm really hoping that my 2022 lessons and experiences can somehow impact you in some positive or meaningful way. I just want to thank you all for being here and sharing your time with me. I really hope that you have a happy new year, and as always, happy composing.